Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Knoop, the Managing Director of Tagmarshal International. And today you're joining the Tagmarshal webinar, where we'll be discussing how technology optimizes efficiency and revenue while improving the player experience. Today we are joined by our expert panel with Matt Johnson from Royal Mayfair, Don Mackay from Muskoka Highlands, and Greg Seaman from Wooden Sticks. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic. We've obviously got quite a few other visitors on the webinar today too. Out to the west, we have Vancouver and Capilano. Down in Calgary, I can see that we have Serenity, Blue Devil, Earl Grey, Banff Springs joining us today. We've also got St. Charles from Winnipeg joining us, Pine Grove and St. Andrews Valley, to name a few. So you're all most welcome today. To get the ball rolling today, guys, I might just ask you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little about your course. Don, if you don't mind getting the ball rolling.
Thanks very much, and welcome everybody this morning. It's from frosty -20 Bracebridge here, but we have 155 acres on the 6,000 yard course. We're sort of an entry-level course, dog-friendly. We're one of the few courses in Canada that are dog-friendly, and that's a bit of a unique selling point for us up here. We've been with Tagmarshal since August of last year and have seen some initial successes, but the training wheels are still on.
Thanks, Don. Matt?
Yeah, Matt Johnson, Director of Golf of the Royal Mayfair Golf Club in Edmonton. Some of you may know us. 1922 we started, so we're approaching our centenary, which is exciting. St. Stanley Thompson design. We're the downtown club of the city. So we're a private club that is, our key values are access to tee and the experience. So pace of play, I always say pace of play and staffing are my two nightmares at the end of each day. And we collaborated with Tagmarshal this spring when COVID hit, which was a perfect way to start off the relationship. Members and staff alike really grew fond of the system, and excited to speak a bit more about it today.
Thanks, Matt. And Greg, you've obviously been one of the front leaders in the Canadian market and one of our longest clients there. Please tell us a bit more about your club.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Good to be here. Same, we're like Don, not as cold as Muskoka, but still too cold for us. Wooden Sticks, daily fee, high-end destination course north of Toronto. A few unique things. We now are our 21st year. We opened up with our concept being replica holes, or inspired holes as we call them, from famous holes on PGA Tour, Augusta, Troon, St. Andrews, those types of things. They're not as exact as you think. We always say as close as a bulldozer will get you, but it gives people a sense of the property and scope. It's unique. The other holes are strong on their own. Aside from that, we included meals with all our packages right from the get-go, still do. And we rely on our 26 to 28,000 players, typically are unique, probably getting 20,000 different people a year come to this town. So totally different than the other two courses that are on board here. And we've had now Tagmarshal a couple of years, and it's improved our pace dramatically.
Thanks, Greg. For those of you that don't know much about Tagmarshal at this stage, I was going to tell you a little bit about who we are at this stage before diving into the webinar today. So currently we're working with about 300 courses around the world and have tracked in excess of 15 million rounds of golf. So obviously a lot of data and analytics that are helping courses run smarter operations. Obviously, we've got our panelists today from Muskoka Highlands, Royal Mayfair, and Wooden Sticks. Other courses in Canada would be St. Charles, Summit, Pine Grove, Donalda, to name a few. You can see in the second row there would be some of your private member courses in the USA. So Baltus Roll, Oakmont, Wingfoot, Hazeltine, Conway Farms. In the third row would be some of the daily fee and resort courses. So Pebble Beach, Whistling Straits, Bandon Dunes, Erin Hills, Pinehurst. And then obviously some of the other organizations that we're working with as well would be the USGA, the RNA, and the European Tour. So just giving you a bit of a feel of who we are and who we're working with. Obviously, the discussion point today is how technology optimizes efficiency and revenue while improving the player experience. And at this stage, I think it might be quite poignant to sort of throw it out there, which factors are key to the player experience, albeit that each of you in a slightly different space with a private member club, a high-end daily fee, and an entry-level daily fee resort. I might throw it to you first there, Greg. If you sort of look at these options available to you now, what would you rank as your top 3 as the most important to the player experience?
Well, we with all our staff and training, we focus on 4 things. They all somewhat equal, and I always say that if any one of these falls down, then we'll get a complaint to that degree. So course conditioning, I think once you start getting into the higher percentile of fees you pay, there's a certain expectation of how the course looks, plays, greens, tees, fairways, divots, ball marks, all those sorts of things. Right behind that or equal to that is pace of play. We have guests that are here for 9-10 hours, but they don't want to be on the course for 5 hours. So that becomes lengthy and whatever. So we try to keep it in good pace. We can talk about that later. In our case, because we include meals, obviously, the clubhouse experience and quality of food is also important, but that's somewhat unique to ours.
Don, if I might just jump to you next there. Obviously, you've got your course in the background there, which we'll get to a little bit later. What would you rank as your top 3?
Yeah, I think that I would go with course conditioning. We're always known for having great greens, and people tell us that. That's why they've come to play, because it's a unique layout and the conditioning is there. But the thing we hear about from the upper percentile of people is pace of play, and that is that, you know, again, the biggest competition we've got here is the dock on the lake, because we're in cottage country. So people are up here. 2/3 of our population are here for their cottage or for their summer visit. So yes, they want to play, they want the activity, but they don't want to wait. They don't want to waste time. They'll spend time, but they don't want to feel like they're wasting time. So pace of play is way up there.
Matt, and in your opinion, from an operator's and operational and players' point of view?
Yeah, being a members owned club, obviously, and what we pride ourselves being the premier club in our area, course condition is always of the utmost importance, and that's what you'll hear most complaints about on if something is out of whack. But in saying that, the members groups, the playing partners, kind of takes care of themselves at a members club as you have niches within the membership. So pace of play and access to tee become very important to us, and you know, COVID really showed us that this year. Our rounds went up 40% this year, which was alarming, but I know everybody's in the same boat. And Tagmarshal really allowed us to pressure our efficiencies on the tee to make sure we could accommodate as many members as we could on a daily basis and keep pace at a reasonable amount. Our pace of play is set at 4 hours. If we get near 4 hours, we're in trouble. So, you know, we average around 351 to 353, depending on our tee time intervals.
Great, thanks, Matt. So I wasn't too preemptive here, but thankfully all your answers today sort of match up with what the USGA surveys and studies have to say. So we know that the most important thing to golfers and their on-course experience is obviously the course conditioning. And that's why we understand why courses spend so much of their budget on that. The second most important thing, obviously, being pace, flow, and time. The third being the club facilities, clubhouse, and the fourth being the course layout. So I thank you for answering that in line there. It's made my job and my context a lot easier today. So how does the use of technology improve the player experience? For those of you that don't know how Tagmarshal works, I might just give you a quick rundown. So essentially, there would be one playing device per group. We have our non-screen and screen options. These can also be permanently installed in the carts. And the group's timings and positions are relayed to the on-course staff. And if you don't have on-course staff, it can be relayed to the operations team that might be sitting inside the clubhouse. And they will be alerted preemptively when they're going to be flow and pace issues on course before they become a problem. How the staff and the operations management log into this, it can be done via any tablet, smartphone, computer, and obviously with the two-way devices communicating this information at the same time. You can see one of our classic devices there. Matt, you've been using it this season. Don, you've been using it. It's very discreet. It's unobtrusive. And Greg, obviously yourself, upgrading to the 7-inch screens this season to come. Most importantly, what the golf management and operations team will see on their course is a bird's eye view of the course. And what you see on screen now is what not too dissimilar as to what Greg, Matt, and Don would be seeing. So you can see your staff member if they're either on course or head onto course via the yellow buggy. You can see your staff or maintenance vehicles on course, or your food and beverage or drinks cart on course. Most importantly, what you'll see are all the playing groups on course. And the way the color coordination works is green would be on time. They can be left alone. Red 13 would be a group that is slow, but they aren't being held up by anyone, and they aren't holding anyone else up. So the net effect on the field is 0. They can be left alone. Your problematic groups are going to be your purple or magenta groups, 17 and 6, because not only are they slow, but they are starting to impact the orange groups behind them, which are going to become your frustrated golfers in about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, as I mentioned, the larger the icon, the higher the priority, which would be 17. So at this stage now, the system would preemptively alert the golf course management via pop-up alert, text message, phone call, or email. And it would tell them the group is out of position. And at this stage now, we would like to make an informed decision as to whether we head out into course to speak to the group. So all one would have to do in this stage is actually just click on the playing groups icon. And this is the information that you would have at your disposal before heading out into the course. So group 17 teed off at 8:53. They're currently on the hole 5 fairway. The player's name, so you know who you're approaching before you get there. They're currently 6 minutes out of position against the scheduled time. They've been playing for an hour and 16 and will finish in 4:31. And then the progress chart gives you a feel for their round as to how they've gone on course so far. So they were ahead of time on hole 1 and 2, a drop on 3 and 4, and a big drop on 5. So intuition's telling you that you might even know the members or the guests. They've probably lost the ball, but because they are starting to impact the groups behind them, we do need to go speak to them on group now, on course now. So the key element being compared to the past in that because this information you're receiving is data driven, that conversation on course is going to be completely objective, and so less frictionless and a better outcome all around. And we know that working with the USGA that the highest indicators for an excellent and poor round of golf revolve around the on-course interaction with course staff. So we obviously can see how important this is. But rather than hearing from me too much, Matt, you mentioned earlier it's your first season using the system. How have you and your team embraced this oversight that you're getting?
Yeah, so we have a first tee host pretty well 12 hours a day with a laptop. So they're the ones that provide the fob to the golfers, and they have a laptop with this diagram on it, so they're able to track pace all the time. What we do is we hook it to the either rickshaw or put it in the golf cart. So we're not worried about the fob leaving our property because it returns to the back shop. So that takes care of that issue. Secondly, we have a TV behind the counter in the pro shop with this on it, just to give a visual awareness to the member or the guest that's checking in that this is what's happening on the golf course during the day. And we'll also have it on our point of sale system computer and in our offices. So we're always kind of paying attention to tracking of the golf course. We eliminated any Marshal on the golf course. So what I do is I track these things. You'll get alerts, when they get to that magenta color, and then it's kind of a game time decision if you're going to go out there, or if you just realize they had a bad hole or they're stuck at the snack shack or whatnot. So you follow that group along a little bit, and then I kind of give it to if they keep slowing down after 5 minutes to 10 minutes behind, then I'll send somebody out there. Provides us with knowledge and kind of unemotional data that we can relay to the members and the members behind of exactly what is going on. It really backs up our information, our professionalism when we go out there, and the members learn to trust the system right away.
Thanks, Matt. Greg, how important is this oversight and this alert system to your player experience at Wooden Sticks?
Well, so we're cart mandatory, first of all. We have the screens in the carts, both for information on pace for us and yardages, et cetera, for the golfer. So getting back to, in our case, is that we have a large majority of people playing once a year. So they may or may not be familiar with the course. and that potentially can cause problems with pace. And so you have to kind of make them aware that we're looking. The other thing that's sort of happened over the number of years is that in the beginning of cell phones, we quickly had 144 marshals out there at any point in time. So having this displayed right the first tee basically says you don't need to call us. We're on top of every cart that's out there. So that visual is really good to the customer. And then when we identify those slow groups right away, similarly, we went from spending about 30,000 a year on marshals to not having any out there. People have become far too sensitive, and getting that message, as Matt was sort of alluding to, keeps the emotion out of it, and just make it very subjective that your 5 minutes, ask you to pick it up the next 2 holes, or we'll reposition you. And so from the alerts that come on, what we've also learned is the first time we got this, we were watching it continually. Every alert from going into wrong zones, from pace to whatever, you can kind of get a little overly absorbed in the alert. So you have to really figure out what you want to know and how you're going to react to it. It's more to have, in our case, to make sure there's always eyeballs on it. And then they alert our pro staff whenever they see those magenta circles or even the red people, because those groups that are out there on their own, not affecting anybody, could quickly become a problem if they're not at least told they're responsible for keeping to a certain pace. So over time, we've gotten used to the alerts and what needs reaction, if that's where you want to go, Stephen.
Thanks, Greg. And Don, you obviously started using Tagmarshal for the back end of the season, sort of the last 8 to 9 weeks. How would you compare the way that you used to do things in the past compared to the way that you did it the sort of last few weeks of the season?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, we never did have marshals. We have a point of land that we can get to see 80% of our course. So if we felt that we were getting slow, we might go out and take a look. So we were flying by the seat of our pants. Our beer cart people would tell us when we thought we were getting slower, but it was inexact. It was an art, not a science, and I wanted data. So we now, yeah, like Greg said, you get fixated on this thing because it's throwing so much data at you on a constant basis, and it's kind of fun to watch the little green dots going around the screen. If you're not careful, you can get lost in it. So now we're down to looking for the colors and looking for the data. You'll see later in the control sheets. That's the time per foursome is what we look for. It gives me a very good and warm feeling to go out and talk to people and explain that, they're a little slow, but the people behind them, and they're welcome to be slow, but the people behind them might not appreciate it. So, we've got to watch our play time, and it gives us an informed view. We don't have to guess. It just ups that level of conversation. As you say, it takes the friction out of it. So I watch it. Our GM will be watching it even harder this season. And it just gives us confidence. We know what's going on. It's eyes in the sky.
Brilliant, Don. Thanks. Obviously, you can also see it's quite useful when clicking on a playing group that you can actually see who you're approaching before you get there. Matt, how did that help you guys with your on-course interactions this season?
Well, yeah, good question. Because I've had questions in the past: is do the members feel like Big Brother is watching them? Are they insulted by that initial interaction that you might have on the first tee? And it was actually quite the opposite. It provided our first tee host with a reason to engage in conversation with the members, and we all know that our members want us to be aware of pace of play, even if they're the slow ones. They just don't know that. So it really alleviated kind of that awkward moment when greeting a group at the start. We didn't have to have a script to say it. It just kind of was a conversation starter, which was great. And then, like these guys say, the cell phone calls to the pro shop now are almost completely eliminated. As we'd get one, a couple every shift basically without Tagmarshal, and then as soon as they know that we're watching, all those calls are eliminated, or at least you have an answer when a call comes in of, yes, we're about to go deal with that situation. It's not necessarily the group in front of you, it's group a few in front of you, and this is what's happening. And as soon as you can provide them with that information, their guard goes down and they understand that you're on top of it. So it's just a communication tool, and that's what we're realizing is so important in our industry and the world right now is communication, and this just provides us a easy way to talk to our members and educate them on what's going on.
Thanks, Matt. Obviously, you guys are well aware of this, but for those that aren't, one is obviously able to review a round either post-round or during a round. And when we do, have those interactions on course, the staff are able to leave a message on the system about their interaction. One, to see what your staff are doing to help the on-course experience. But obviously, as I said, to look at rounds retrospectively at the same time. Greg, I might jump to you at this stage, having used the system the longest. How have you experienced using the real-time analysis of rounds and post-round analysis?
Well, every day we're learning a little bit more what works for us. The first little while, it was just trying to get a handle on pace and where the slow spots are, and you kind of can tweak your holes. The next step for us, we have a big property. We have our pace, and I'll kind of back up a little bit. When we first opened, Bill Yates, who is kind of the pace of play guru in North America, did a pace rating, and he came out initially with 4 hours and 58 minutes. We're a big property with 27 minutes of drives between holes, but we weren't going to be able to sell that. So we had to work on opening and making plays of the course play a little smoother and quicker. And we got it down to 440, and we're hopefully going to get it down to 435 is what we're going to promote as pace. So that's been number one, trying to find out what we can do to the course to make holes play a little quicker. In our case, because we have so many unique visitors here, we're starting to analyze what weather and pin locations can do to average pace. So as we see, you reference, and you have on that screen there, the bottom left-hand corner with the pace per holes. So even when you have good pace, let's say, sometimes the superintendent can tuck pins on windy days, and all of a sudden holes on average will play much quicker. We kind of sense that, or play slower or quicker depending. So we need to get together with them, and then based on what we're sort of seeing weather-wise, we have some holes, for example, that are predominantly downwind or into the wind, and it's a big difference. So the golfer doesn't really care what's causing the slow play. We have to do what's best, and that's where it's going to really help us in our next analysis, I think, in our case, Stephen.
Thanks, Greg. And I suppose likewise, getting the geofence alerts, being a cart-only course, when those carts are entering sensitive areas that they're not allowed to go into, easier to have that conversation on course?
No, absolutely. When you see the same group, and they're either going to get it or they're not. They're going to, behave or not. So we can jump on them pretty quick, right? And we do send people out, and and once the first time that you go to see them, they might think they're getting away with it. But if you let them know that, on the second hole, you went astray there, it wasn't out of not knowing, they were kind of doing it on purpose straight down the middle of the fairway, then they behave pretty quick, most of them.
Great, thanks a million. Just jumping onto our next question in line with today's webinar, what is technology's impact on efficiency? And for those of you that haven't seen it before, we obviously have our analytics hub. And basically what happens with Tagmarshal is that every round of golf with a tag on at the facility will always be recorded in the system. So you can go back historically 3 or 4 years, and a bit like we showed you the round earlier, we can actually review that round. Now, what one would actually see on the analytics hub, and Don, Greg, and Matt obviously have access to this too, but just to give for the newbies a quick snapshot, when you log into the platform, as I said, via your computer, smart device, or tablet, you'll see how many tee-off times there were at the club, the average round time at the club against the target time, your marshal interventions for that time period. This can also be measured against 9 holes or 18 holes. The integrated data, golfweather.com, to make your data more relevant. And then we also have a measurement of your pace distribution or flow. And just to give you a quick idea of this, we know that this average round time measurement is a good indicator of how the course is running. However, what we do know is that if a lot of 4 balls are playing quickly in the morning when the course is empty, and then as the day and the course gets busier, things slow up a bit, we know that a lot of those quick times in the morning will hide your poor round times. And that's why we also measure what we call pace distribution or your course flow, where we measure how many groups are on time, and in orange, how many groups are 10 minutes over the goal time, which we would deem acceptable in a management space. So really critical to getting that course flow right. What the system will also measure for you is your starter accuracy, really important to course flow. I'll let you guys talk to this in the next few minutes, because Greg, you obviously spoke about course setup earlier, but how each of the individual holes are playing at the club, including the halfway house, because this is a type of information, data analytics, that we can really deep dive into to optimizing that, the on-course experience, and obviously the operations at the club. And these little bars on the screen here will show you the days of the week, how many rounds are played. The little envelopes will be your Marshal interactions. So a lot of data and analytics available to the clubs. Now, the one that I've actually pulled out here today is Muskoka Highlands. So Don, from having used the system for 8 or 9 weeks, how did you find the usage of this analytics hub?
Yeah, that second most important screen after seeing the course and the live view of what's happening is this screen right here. This is the one that I keep up more than the rest, because this kind of keeps everything in balance. And we know from recent USGA studies that the rounds tend to be faster in the morning. They tend to slow as the afternoon goes on, and that's just sort of a general statement, but that seems to be an industry trend. So I watch this one because you can't get too harsh. Like, you've got this 5-10 minute flow or discretion, if you want, that you've got to work with, because you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with people who are out there for their time. And so it makes it very easy for us to, as long as those red lines aren't spiking way up above our planned time, we're okay. And then when you go out and see it, unfortunately, when you go out and see the people that are spiking, they're saying, well, I'm just out for a good time. I don't care how long it takes. And so, but this gives us data that we can sit and chat with them about what other people's expectations are behind them. This is a very, very important slide. This is a very, very important screen for operators to keep up.
Matt, you said this season, obviously, you've had a high demand from the members wanting to play at the course now. How are you able to use this information to optimize your tee sheet at the high demand?
Well, yeah, this year this became really important to me to manage the golf course, especially with the demand. We typically do 10-minute intervals, which allows for great pace of play on average, but not great inventory of tee times if you have a clamoring group of members that want in. So we really used this at the end of June to realize what our average pace of play was, which was 351 at that time with 10-minute intervals. And then that gave me the opportunity to play with that to see the cause and effect when I would change the tee time intervals. So I dropped it down to 9 minutes to increase the inventory of tee times for our members. And I noticed it went up by about 2 minutes. So 353, well within our 4 hours. But also I could see the time of day when, like these guys said, when rounds were really fast and then when they slowed. And you can see it's almost the same every day. So you can actually set up your tee sheets differently throughout the day. Maybe start with 8-minute intervals if you need it. Go to 9, and then at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where you see pace really slow down, go back to 10-minute intervals. So you can really fine tune your golf course to make sure you're keeping up to the demand, but also adhering to your pace of play. And I just thought this was just great analytics to use for that, and simple to understand. There wasn't any data mining I had to do or anything like that. It was just really easy to look at and make a decision right away.
Greg, thanks for that, Matt. Greg, you obviously mentioned earlier, that this type of information is really useful with regards to your course setup, chatting to the ground staff, pin placement on busier, windy days at the same time. How does this information help you optimize your tee sheet and, I suppose, spin off revenue at the club?
Well, we're still sticking at 10 minutes. We're not going to try and put more players in. I see Matt's usage makes a lot of sense when you're dealing with the same people every day. We want to maintain that 10 minutes, get them through the course, timely fashion. Overall pace is number one to that satisfaction. The other thing you mentioned about halfway huts, another, we can't be responsible for causing that delay at the turn. So we follow that pretty critically there. We make sure the food and beverage staff that are there, they know we're kind of watching that to be prepared. There's a sort of a process when they come through there. Even if we, in some courses you try to get them to order, ahead of time, it doesn't really matter if those staff aren't on the ball there. So that's an important part with us. We same with on-course staff when they're around. You can kind of watch those interactions, and same thing. They can't be stopped in the slowest group in the middle of the fairway when there's groups behind, if you know what I mean. So a little bit of education there. So we're looking at more or less, we do look at the stat at the end of the day to see. Similarly, our morning players, they're all going to play fast. That's why they kind of pick morning. But you really got to stay on top of a potentially slow group at 8 in the morning because of the big impact. So the only other thing when we see spikes in our world here too is that occasionally you'll get a slow group and the play isn't that full. Last year was an anomaly. We're continually full. Hope that's the case, but you can allow groups to play through, and that's and so you might see one spike. That's okay as long as they didn't affect a lot of players in the day, right? So we'll offer that rather than force people to play slow on a quiet day. If there's places for people to go to pass them, we'll do that. So as I say, there's all I can say in our years. There's lots of information here, and I think in time courses will find what they're going to look at to make them run as smoothly as possible.
Great, thanks, Greg. We obviously have a lot of questions popping through at this stage now, with a lot of people eager to extract quite a bit of information from you guys, and it's been flying in. I'm just going to jump to a couple of those questions now. The first one, and I might direct this to you, Matt. I'm from a private member club, very traditional. What is the member reaction to Tagmarshal?
Very positive. So we have the fob, so we don't have a screen or anything, so it's very discreet. Like I said, it's a conversation starter for our first tee host. It's great because our pace of play time would be 4 hours. Would I send a letter if anybody's 4:05? No, but I'd like to know that, so when they're having a beer, I can go up to them and just have that casual conversation. Hey, what happened out there? You guys have a tough round, or maybe something else happened, and just them being aware that we're aware at all times of what's going on in the course. And then, if it gets over that, it gives me ammunition to send that letter if it becomes a problem, or if they're, you can extract one member from the database and start seeing what their pace is on a normal time. And also, I remember one day this year, we've all had this that a member will storm off the golf course, or a group storms off the golf course, and discuss with how the feeling of the pace of play was that day, and then they send you a nasty email or note, and this provided perfect ammunition was to call them on their bluff. Not that I want to do that all the time, but to actually provide concrete data. Actually, this is what was going on. Yeah, you were 4 minutes behind at this time, but it was starting anyways. So, and then it backs them off right away when they realize that you have data to back up your opinion. So the members loved it. They used to kind of joke a little bit that it was Big Brother, but they kind of, I never heard one complaint that we were watching. They were more impressed that we were interested in caring about the pace of play out there.
Great, thanks, Matt. I see we've actually got a follow-up question for you, which sort of ties in a little bit to what you've just answered there. Are you able to bring up reports on specific players to handle the constant abusers? Matt, being a private facility, do you prefer to send a message or not interrupt the members around, or do you prefer to handle it person to person, depending on the scenario?
Yeah, like I said before, I think if it's a one-off and they had some guests out that day, I might just have a quick jab at them as they come off the golf course, or just it's a conversation starter to to talk to over their first beer. Just nothing confrontational, just more of information. They're impressed, and maybe I'm just a geek that way, that I start memorizing everybody's pace of play that day and able to have that conversation with them. But the constant abusers, thankfully I didn't have to deal with it too much this year, but the constant abusers, again, you have the feed, you have the analytics to strengthen your case. So you can actually, if you send that note to the member, if you have that conversation with the member, you can bring up examples of what had happened and why we need to change our habits. So it provides the data. It's science. The data you can't lie to the data, and which makes much more credible conversation when you're having it.
Great, thanks, Matt. I think a lot of the members clubs on the call will resonate with a lot with what you're saying today. Donna, I might throw the next question your way. I'm from a daily fee club with 60 carts and about 15% walkers. Do I need to use Tagmarshal for the walkers?
Great question. Yes, advised, but it does. You've got enough data from your carts. As long as the walkers are mixed in with the carts, you can get away. We did this year with just cart tags. But knowing that when you see the gap you have to educate yourself. So when you see the gap on the map, you're wondering what the hell happened. We've got a whole open hole, but oh yeah, we got walkers out there. So you've got to, it leaves a little bit of work for you to do as the operator to know where your walkers are versus where the carts are, so you can judge if somebody's holding up, why they're being held up. It's usually not the walkers. You will find that recent USGA studies show that walking is faster than riding for 4 people. So, but we will be issuing walkers with tags this year.
Yeah, so essentially, Don, you were saying that you were trying to get away with it at one stage, but for the ideal scenario, you would be looking to track your carts and your walkers to get complete oversight of all the groups and not throwing out the timing algorithms on course.
Correct. It's just that the one thing that you'd want to be careful of, and we did this too late, we lost a few tags with guys just forgetting they had them, and we didn't catch them on the way out with poor signage, I guess. But you can put the electronic fence on your exit so that if they break the exit with their tag, you can quickly get on the phone and say, would you mind just coming back with that tag, please?
I think if memory serves me correct, on the geofence, which one can set up, wasn't put at the time, and once you had that installed, it no longer became an issue.
Right, and I will. But one other thing that just to raise, Stephen, if stuff gets off site, you guys have got a wonderful method through Google to go in and find out exactly what house in what city that tag is sitting.
I'll take the compliment there, Don, and I think the dev team will too. Greg, I might jump to you at this stage. Question was, unfortunately, during COVID-19, we have had to reduce our number of staff. Do we need someone on course the whole day with Tagmarshal?
No, I think it's education on the first tee. If you're starting, if it's pro staff or whatever, getting people out, we actually post something in the carts to make sure that they understand how important pace is. And then as long as somebody's got eyeballs on the screen or even on the cell phone, for that matter, we have one laptop, for example, that we move from quiet time just at the first tee. But if we shut that down because in activity that comes in the shop or goes to our golfer services staff, somebody's watching that screen. And then we always have 2 or 3 staff people who are trained to handle that slow play on course issue. So they get made aware of it. Like I said, those people always have it on their phone, but they're not necessarily need to look at it all the time. And they would all go out and deal with the problem. And in our case with public golf, we find there's 2 kinds of golfers here that cause slow play. There's just the players that the course is too tough for them. And they're the ones that are usually open to either skipping a hole or moving up because score is already off the radar. They're not looking to try and shoot par, for example. And then there's the golfers that are just a little oblivious to the world around them. And those are the ones that you have to impress upon what their pace is doing to everybody else's enjoyment. So to get back to that question, no, you can be way more efficient, and especially on quieter days.
Thanks, Greg. I think I might throw this one to the entire panel there. You're obviously all very familiar with Bill Yates, and who made great strides in pace of play and flow management on golf courses and guided it for many years. What do you think? Bill's obviously passed away, unfortunately, now, but what do you think his reaction would be to the way that the system is being implemented at courses now, essentially digitizing what he had been put in place for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, I could start with that because I met him at the very early days when he did our course and read a lot of stuff on what he did. And he had a great comment. He said, people over in Scotland and England, he says they don't play any faster, they just finish quicker. And his comment was based on, he said the biggest part of it, or the problems with slow play, arises from architects, number one. And over in England, a lot of private clubs, even those old traditional courses in Canada and in North America, you walk off the green and the tee is right next to it. So there's literally no time between holes. And then in our case, we took advantage of a big property and lots of scenery or whatever, and there's big spaces which can cause problems right away. Speed of greens, we have short holes that play slow because of green sites and people climbing out of deep bunkers and those sorts of things. But I think he was all for it. He looked at width of fairway, speed of greens, hazards, length of grass, all kinds of things. And if what you're doing here is just basically collecting data on what he was doing pen and pencil. So he'd have a big thumbs up in my eye.
Matt?
I think he'd be thankful that the golf community is finally using science as a barometer of what's going on their golf course. I know in the past when I've done our pace of play charts, I've just sat at my desk and guessed what time it should take to finish a par 3, par 4, and par 5, and how long it should take for 5 minutes at the snack shack to grab a beer. And then I'm going off and I'm trying to hold our members accountable to this pace that I just dreamt up. And as long as it equaled 4 hours, I was happy with it. But so it really provides, analytical and scientific data to do the right thing. And it's a long time coming that golf has gotten with the times. As we know, analytics are everywhere right now. And it just provides another tool in our toolbox.
Yeah, I'd guess he'd just wish he was 30 or 40 years younger if he was still alive so that he could enjoy this technology.
Thanks, Don. I suppose all very kind words there to one of the forefathers of pace of play and flow management. We have one question there just left for the day, guys, because we're obviously also trying to be poignant and staying on pace for the designated time for the webinar today. The last question just being, what was Tagmarshal's effect on your labor costs at your club? It said during 2020, obviously that's directed at Don and Matt, and then Greg, you've got probably an historical answer for that one.
Tough to gauge using 2020 as a barometer. As the we were just trying to plug holes everywhere and create. We had gate attendance that we never had in the past and whatnot because of COVID. But it alleviated pressure to have that kind of mid-shift staff to kind of cover any oopses that are happening in the operations. Everything's fine first couple hours in the morning, last couple hours at night, always. But it's kind of that middle busy part where everybody's being stretched thin anyways with, programming with clinics and whatnot, people coming on and off the golf course. So we found that we're able to plan for issues on the golf course. And like this system shows, it's going to tell you an issue is about to happen before anybody else realizes it's about to happen. So this provides you with a warning. Now you have 5, 10, 15 minutes to coordinate who's going to deal with that, who has the time to deal with it, and who has the expertise to deal with it. And then away you go and you deal with the problem, and then the problem is done. You're not hearing about it for the rest of the day. So that's how it just became efficient. I was telling these guys last week that I became a bit of a tee sheet or a pace play hawk like everybody does on the tee sheet, and I have it on my cell phone. So I'll be playing interclub at another club, knowing that the visiting interclub is at our club, and you're always worried about pace of play. And I can check on pace of play in between shots or whatnot, and message back to my staff, hey, you better watch out for group 4. I'm worried about them, kind of thing. So it alleviated a lot of stress in my life when I wasn't on site too, which might have been unhealthy, but that's the world we live in.
Great.
Yeah, I'd agree with this. I'd agree with the stress comment completely because our rounds just about doubled this year, and so we were under a lot of stress with people always coming and always going. And when you're that busy, COVID was great. It provided players. It decreased the workforce. I don't know if you saw the recent release by the government of Canada, how many millions of dollars they paid out to 15 through 17 or 18-year-old kids who drew $500 a week and didn't have to work. So, I mean, I was doing parking lot hires in front of parents. So it reduced my stress load completely for that angle, because then I knew the course was under control. It didn't change our labor metrics at all. It's just my stress metric.
Well, in my case, it was all labor savings. So we, in our early days, still learning pace and trying to get as efficient as possible, we would have four 5-hour Marshal shifts a day on a busy day. We've been fairly consistent with numbers, 25 to 28,000 rounds every year. And that just took it away. And then you do have the odd slow days, and senior marshals, between handling conflict and resolving that, sometimes didn't go over as well. Minimize that, keep them from ball hawking on quiet days, driving out there mindlessly. We just got way more efficient on that. So in my case, the value of $175 round and having consistent play and being able to save on that labor, this system in my particular case pays for itself every year, just in efficiency and control against labor.
Great, thanks, Greg. I think that wraps up the webinar today, guys. And I thank you very much for your time and your insights having used the system, and a big thank you to everyone else for having joined us this afternoon. Of course, if you guys would like any more information about Tagmarshal, would like to chat to Greg, Donna, or Matt, I'm sure they would make themselves available. But otherwise, feel free to, for more information, to visit the website or to contact myself directly. So yes, thanks very much, everybody. Pleasure having you today, and we'll chat to you soon.